everyone, Kat here. So, there I was, doing yet another playthrough of Pokemon Scarlet Violet, specifically the Victory Road plot, when I thought to myself, it is such a shame the plot lines are all separated from each other. I mean, how nice would it be if the Paldea rival trio actually traveled together before the tail end of the game? Then, I got to the Matenavera gym and thought, it's a real shame Ryme loves double battles so much, but she never gets to have a tag battle. Wouldn't it be great if she and Grusha had one battle against the player for double the badges? It was at that moment my switch began to pulse with a scarlet glow, and presented me with an altered version of the game plot just as I envisioned, where player character Juliana can pair up with any friend of her choosing. Wait, does she... Yeah, I guess she has to know who Penny is, but she wouldn't know Team Star is innocent without finishing the Starfall Street plot. Any rival/character she may still kind of view as the antagonist of her choosing. And now, for your viewing pleasure, I will recount that epic battle to the best of my ability. Please enjoy. It started off with Ryme calling out the new rules of the challenge to the small but excited group of students who'd arrived at her gym. She and Grusha would have a tag battle against two opponents, who would then receive both the Ice and Ghost badges if they won. While Arvin understood the gym leader's challenge, it took him a moment to process it, after which he only had one response. What? Juliana looked from one person to another. Her eyes fell to Demona first, but the champion held up her hands and shook her head. I'm afraid I've already done the gym challenge, she said. I can't compete for the badges again. And helping you would be cheating. Arvin could have sworn he heard her sniffle when she stepped back down off the stage. The girl's right, Grusha called. Pick someone else. Juliana froze with indecision. Her eyes met Arvin's, her next most obvious choice, but there was a certain lingering mistrust after she'd run off to go gather badges instead of help gather Herba Mystica to save Mavastif's life. It might have been to get stronger for the Titans, but moving forward was tricky. Then again, that narrowed Juliana's selection down to a certain Team Star leader. This crowd ain't waiting all night, Ryme said. If you won't pick, I will. She pointed to Juliana and Penny. You ladies can try first. Now, who's ready for some epic double battles? The crowd roared their approval, and Arvin moved back toward the steps. I'm not competing for... he began, only for Nemona to tug on his bag. He knelt down and she cupped her hands to whisper in his ear. Sorry to bring this up, but aren't you way behind in your schoolwork? Arvin flushed but nodded. She wasn't wrong. Well, 2 gym badges would go a long way in earning you some leeway with the teachers. It would? He looked back at the stage. Juliana more or less had to drag Penny to the challenger's end of the battle court. From what Arvin could make out, she added some heavy guilt trips and a side of outright begging before Penny relented and stood beside her without objection. I can't believe I got roped into this, Penny half thought, half muttered as she went through the Pokemon she had on hand. I seriously cannot believe I got roped into this. Juliana had walked to the other side of the stage for a moment to answer some questions of Grusha, and she now waved to Penny as she returned. He says I can use Beartick if I want, she said. Oh, but it can't use Sheer Cold, which limits the number of moves it can use, so probably not the best option. Penny replied. Maybe if Juliana saw how very little she responded to any socializing attempts, she would go on with whatever strategy she had in mind and leave Penny to do the same. Juliana looked through 3 other Pokeballs. She had a 4th, but presumably it was the Porygon that she had offered to trade Penny and was also heavily underpowered. You know, she said, keeping 2 and returning the 3rd to her belt, I don't think Team Star is all bad. I'm flattered. That came out wrong, Juliana said. When Penny didn't respond, she kicked at the stage floor and continued. I mean, you guys are complicated, and I didn't want it to be that way. I wanted all of Paldea's problems to be solvable through simple Pokemon battles. She looked down at the 2 Pokeballs, one in each hand. I wish there was an obvious bad guy for all the weird stuff that's been happening here, you know? An evil team boss, alien invaders, corporate greed. How would you defeat corporate greed with a Pokemon battle? Juliana laughed awkwardly and ignored the question. My point is, I get things are much more nuanced than that, and I'm sorry I jumped to conclusions about you and your team. Apology accepted, I guess. Penny said with a shrug, because please stop talking so we can get this over with wouldn't land well. So, who are you bringing with you? All right, Tinkaton and Farigiraf, Juliana replied. Rather than looking hurt or put off by the bluntness, she simply adapted Penny's no-nonsense tone. You? Penny sighed. Glaceon's not really ready for a battle like this, and I removed Flareon from my team to make room for her. Umbreon has an obvious advantage, and Leafeon against Grusha would just be stupid. So, it's really between Jolteon and Vaporeon. I see. So, do we prioritize speed or bulk? She knew the strengths of the different evolutions then. Penny wouldn't call herself impressed, but Juliana did earn herself some goodwill. And she'd apologized, even if it was unwelcome and long-winded. Bonus goodwill then. I suppose I've built friendships on less. Penny held out Vaporeon's Pokeball. A doubles match could go long, and when one of our Pokemon goes down, we can't switch to another. I say bulk. Ready to start yet? Grusha called. Yeah, we're coming, Juliana replied. The two girls took their spots side by side on the edge of the battlefield. MC Sledge gave the signal and 4 Pokeballs flew into the air. 4 bursts of white light lit up the stage, revealing the first set of opponents. Grusha and Ryme had sent out Frostmoth and Houndstone. Penny and Juliana had sent out Umbreon and Tinkaton. I'm not liking the look of a bug type against Umbreon, said Juliana. Me neither, said Penny. But Umbreon's got a Razor Claw on hand. I'll force it to flinch, and you take it out with Tinkaton. Juliana nodded her understanding, and all 4 trainers gave directions to attack at once. To Penny's pleasant surprise, Umbreon was the fastest and got Frostmoth with a direct hit Dark Pulse. She smiled, having calculated the odds of a flinch many times. This move was practically as good as a fake-out, with better damage to boot. She watched for the telltale sign of Frostmoth twitching in place, unable to move. Except it did move. Its wings fluttered with a dandelion green powder that rose in a protective cloud around its buggy little body. Its ability is shield dust, Penny realized to her dismay. It can't flinch. Frostmoth gave a forceful flap of its wings. Clumps formed inside the wall of powder, each one looking like a tiny version of Frostmoth itself. The swarm flew towards Umbreon, surrounding and nipping at her while she growled and snapped. It did no good. This was infestation, and not only would it continue to distract and disorient Umbreon, it would prevent Penny from calling her back. To add insult to injury, Houndstone was charging at Umbreon with a pulsing pink light. Penny would never hear the end of it from Ortega if she failed to recognize that attack. Play rough. Dodging with a swarm of powder bugs in her face was impossible, but to Umbreon's credit, she took the hit like a champ. Of course, if the gym leaders continued to gang up on the dark type, she wouldn't last much longer. Tinkaton might have been slow to wind up her weapon, but the power behind her swing made it worth the wait. Gigaton Hammer swung through Frostmoth's powder shield and sent the bug tumbling. Its crumpled wings quivered as it righted itself and returned to the battle, hurt but not out. Everyone called out their next attacks, and the Pokemon tried again. Unable to use Gigaton Hammer twice in a row, Juliana went for Ice Hammer instead. I think Play Rough is a bigger threat, she said, pointing Tinkaton toward her target. Agreed, Penny said. And they're not the only team who can focus their attacks, right? Umbreon grinned and readied another Dark Pulse. Despite the swarm of infestation, it ran undeterred with Tinkaton straight for Houndstone. Right before the attacks landed, Houndstone disappeared. Ice shards and dark energy bounced harmlessly off the stage floor. Juliana gasped. What the? How's our Phantom Force looking to you? Ryme laughed. Penny felt like a fool. The gym leader's setup was perfect, and they weren't done yet. Frostmoth came at Umbreon from behind with a Bug Buzz attack. Umbreon stood her ground and took the hit. Her legs quivered afterwards, her special defenses compromised. The Pokemon had enough energy for one more move. Maybe. Better make it count. Umbreon, ready a Dark Pulse for Houndstone when it reappears, Penny ordered. Ryme gritted her teeth, but of course there was little she could do. Houndstone materialized and hit Tinkaton with its ethereal energy. Umbreon's Dark Pulse blasted it from behind. The ghost Pokemon grunted and fell to its knees, the candle on its head flickering. Tinkaton, called Juliana. Show off that Gigaton Hammer again! Pick up the speed, Frostmoth, said Grusha. Use Tailwind. The order sent Frostmoth moving double time. It frantically flapped its wings and a chill wind picked up behind the gym leader's team right before Tinkaton landed her hit. The bug Pokemon plummeted to the floor and returned to Grusha's Pokeball. Yes! Juliana cheered. 1 down and 3 to go! Penny wished she could feel as confident, but she had other concerns. Is Houndstone... She looked to where the canine Pokemon had fallen, but the light on its candle looked brighter now than it had before. And the more the audience cheered, the more energy Houndstone seemed to have. until it was back on its feet, howling mightily at the sky. Does cheering energize it or something? Penny asked. Well, yeah, of course it does, answered Juliana. Never underestimate cheer power, in terror raids or gym battles. Penny didn't have the energy to question her. In place of Frostmoth, Grusha sent out Beartic. Penny winced instinctively, but then again, unlikely a gym leader would count on a luck-based move like Sheer Cold. She smiled and raised her hand. Use Psychic on Beartic. Tinkaton, use... Before Juliana could finish her sentence, Houndstone vanished again. Beartic slammed its paws into the stage. The whole place shook as chunks of rock and earth materialized from the floor, surrounding both Umbreon and Beartic. The earthquake attack hit where Houndstone had been a moment before, but of course, it wasn't there to take the hit. Tinkaton squealed and Umbreon growled, but the power of Beartic's attack was too much. Both of them fell and returned to their Pokeballs in dual beams of red light. Oh no, Juliana moaned. My sentiments exactly, Penny thought, but Team Star's leader would not give up. She called forth Vaporeon, who appeared beside Juliana's Farigiraf. Phantom Force failed against the normal type, the first breath of fresh air Penny had felt. Full VV power, she called out. Use Aqua Jet. It wasn't a move she normally kept with Vaporeon, preferring a consistent quick attack across all her team members, but against ghost types, Aqua Jet became an excellent quick attack substitute. Before Houndstone could disappear again, a blast of water smacked its handle, and it fainted in earnest. Juliana cheered, but then turned to Penny with a smirk. Full VV power, huh? Penny flushed. Sorry, but you put me on your team. You get my anime-inspired catchphrases, too. Why are you sorry? Your catchphrase rocks. And that, Penny decided, was how Juliana earned herself extra bonus, possibly friendship-level goodwill. Banette appeared on the scene next. Its red eyes glowed with the thirst for victory. And yet, its grin didn't stretch as wide as Penny expected. It looked to its trainer, who nodded. Do what you can. Banette turned back and stretched open its cloth-like mouth. Cold flowed from the darkness. Juliana rubbed her arms. Farigiraf braced itself. Ice crystals gathered around the Pokemon's ankles, which would no doubt slow her down. But otherwise, she weathered the attack with no issue. Vaporeon yawned like she hadn't even noticed an attack. Penny didn't get it. They went out of their way for that tailwind to let them move first every time. So why would they waste it with a weak, speed-reducing move like Icy Wind? Especially when one of their opponents was a water type. She racked her brain trying to see the logic. No gym leader would make a rookie mistake like forgetting type matchups. Every move they made had a reason. But what did Icy Wind do that gave them any sort of advantage later on? Penny yelped as Beartic let out a roar. Another earthquake attack rattled its way across the stage. Banette couldn't vanish like Houndstone could, but Ryme didn't look upset. In fact, her focus was more on Beartic. They wouldn't waste moves. Unless... Farigiraf leapt to avoid the falling rocks, but her iced ankles slowed her down. The earthquake caught her in the back leg first and then on the side. She whinnied and huffed and stomped at the floor. If Penny could speak Pokemon, she translated as, "Why, the very idea!" Vaporeon leapt up as well. It still took a hit from a high slab of rock, but like Juliana had said, the water type was built for bulk. Unless... Slow them down! Ryme commanded. Unless... Wait! It was unusually optimistic thinking for Penny, but she couldn't get the speed of the opponent's team out of her head. Controlling whose hits landed first turned the whole tide of the battle. Penny had quick attack on every team member for a reason. Priority moves were huge, and Banette with its prankster ability had quite a few of them. Only now, that was a bad thing. The advantage of Icy Wind is that Banette can actually use it. All of Banette's other moves are status or priority moves, nullified by Farigiraf's Armor Tail. Penny allowed herself a sly smile. I like that look, Juliana said. I happened to teach Farigiraf rain dance, you know. Oh, did you? Penny said casually. Shall we try it? Penny didn't answer the question. She rather thought the grin on her face and the Terra Orb she brought out spoke for themselves. Rain poured down with Farigiraf's cry. Vaporeon blasted Beartic with Hydro Pump first, letting Juliana finish it off, and leaving the helpless Banette as their only opponent left. Now, I don't think I have to tell you that the battle ended with Juliana and Penny being quite victorious. Thanks for listening, everyone. Really hope you enjoyed it. I'll be doing Arven's battle next, and I'll actually be pairing him up with one of the Team Star bosses since Nimona is unavailable. When that video's ready, you'll see it right here. Until next time, happy reading and happy training!